Well, in 1930, Harley-Davidson Motor Company was really at a low point in their, at that time, 20-some-year career. It was the height of the Great Depression. There was only 3 motorcycle manufacturers that were open for business in 1930, and that would be Harley-Davidson, Indian, and Excelsior. Harley-Davidson was a little behind the curve and wanted to win the Hillclimb Championship for 1930, and that's where we're going to start this story.
At Wheels Through Time, there are hundreds of motorcycles and dozens of cars, each with a story all of their own. From the rarest antiques to the most iconic styles, we are dedicated to telling the story of these old bikes.
In 1929, Excelsior Motor Company in Chicago, Illinois won the Hillclimb National Championship. Gene Ryan was the rider of the bike. The bike is actually on the hill here at Wheels Through Time. One of the really important displays at Wheels Through Time is the Hillclimb exhibit. So for those that don't really understand why these bikes are really glorified in such a manner, these are actually among the rarest motorcycles in the world. In the world of collecting today, people that understand motorcycle collecting and rare motorcycles have discovered that Harley-Davidson only built 20 of these motorcycles. This is number 9 of 20 built. Number 10 is in front of it. So these are actually sequentially numbered of 20 built. But going all the way around the hill is the real treasury of American hill climbing. The sport itself, started when the first motorcycle started and there was a hill. Well, whoever gets to the top of the hill first wins the race. But motorcycle hill climbing as a competition really became prevalent in around 1925. Harley, Indian, Excelsior, Henderson, Reading Standard, some of the other companies all jumped into the game. However, Harley-Davidson, Indian, and Excelsior were really the lead companies. Now here on the hill is glorified certainly the best collection of rare American hill climbers in the world. I'm going to kind of real briefly go around the hill. I have the eyes in the back of my head. We've got number 9 and 10 DAH. In front of that, Charlie Jacobs, 1938 National Championship bike, 2-time national champion. In front of that is the blue and cream Harley. Roy Burke won the West Coast Championship in 1938 on that bike. The 2 bikes in front of that are both individually and singularly built by Harley-Davidson in 1929 or 1930, and they're absolutely factory-built, one-of-a-kind motorcycles. These bikes, by the way, were all built in the Works Racing Shop. So going around the hill that way, in front of the 2 one-of-a-kinds, there's actually a home-built hill climber of quite some fame, and then kind of picking it up right 180 opposite me on the hill is a 1938 Indian hill climber. It's a model, it's an Indian Scout, Sport Scout hill climber. They only made 18 of them. Right over there, you can't see it, but it's the first bike you can't see right now, is a 1928 Indian Altoona hill climber. It happens to be serial number 1 of 6 built. Coming around over here is a 1929 Indian overhead valve 750. Also, the pair of Excelsior 750 overhead valve hill climbers, and the bike I'm really proud of, which I just finished, which is the 1925 Harley FH twin cam hill climber. We did an entire series on Dale's channel on building this bike from the bottom up, and you get to see that bike run. The other thing I wanted to share with you about hill climbing, it wasn't just one kind of bike hill climbing or one size. They had multiple classes and multiple engine classes, including what's called an outlaw class. In the outlaw class, your engine could be as big as you wanted it to be, and many of the engines were built in the 80 cubic inch and 90 cubic inch area. That's twice the engine size of this machine right here. This is a 1930, and I'm going to kind of come back to the bike that I'm sitting on. I'm very proud of this bike. I'll tell you in just a little bit where I found this bike in California. But the bike itself is a 1930 Harley-Davidson model DAH, Harley D model for the D, and then Alcohol Hill Climber, DAH. And as I mentioned, this is number 10 of only 20 built, and the bike in front of it is number 9. Both of these bikes were found in California. This one is of quite some interesting fame. It was raced by the probably one of the most famous hill climbers of the day, which was Dudley Perkins. Their family still owns the Harley-Davidson dealership in San Francisco. They've been in business, I think, for about 110 years now. And I was out at Dudley Perkins and visited Tom, whose grandfather raced this motorcycle. He shared lots of pictures of the bike with me, and the DH Hill Climbers truly will go down as probably one of the most famous bikes ever. I don't know if any of you have ever been to the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but right in front of the museum, there's a monstrous bronze statue, life-size statue of a hill climbing motorcycle. And the bike they've chosen to glorify Harley-Davidson's history in that walk in the museum sculpture is the DH 750. So in the mind's eye of the management at Harley-Davidson, the DH is right on the top of American hill climb history. Now the bike itself looks so unusual because it is unusual. Almost all of the parts on this motorcycle were singularly built for the 20 they produced in 1930. So although these bikes are one serial number apart, there's a few differences, and some of those came through modification. If you look at number 9, it has what's called a trailing link front fork. And the trailing link front fork is a front fork that was designed for hill climbing. You'll see it on some BMW motorcycles. It's not, Harley wasn't the first company to make the trailing link fork, and they used it on the DH Hill Climber exclusively. Some of the folks that were in that sport at the time didn't like the trailing link fork, and apparently Dudley Perkins didn't like the trailing fork because he's modified it, straightened it out. So it's the same fork, he's just modified it. Slightly different handlebars, same gas tanks, frame, transmission, rear fender, etc. But the most important thing about what Harley did in this area, you have to understand, this is at the very height of the Depression. Harley-Davidson was struggling. They had just come out with a Model VL, their big road model in 1930. They recalled every one of them, made the dealers change the frames, almost put Harley out of business. At the same time they were having that problem, the 750 road model was going through all kinds of development problems and was really a problematic bike. So they had no money, they had a very limited workforce, but what they had was a lot of guts, a lot of intuition, and they had a great history behind them, and they had employee loyalty that was beyond anything you can imagine. So the people that worked at Harley-Davidson in 1930 really stuck with that company to see it through to the end. And the DH Hill Climber is important in that story. No different then than it is today. To win a NASCAR race on Sunday is for that company to sell a car on Monday. And Harley-Davidson, Indy, and Excelsior were no different. If they could win that national championship, put that bike on top of the hill, then it's very likely a national championship is going to increase road model sales, keep the company alive. Now there's a lot of documentation on the DAH. If you'll notice right in front of the bike, I got some various posters hanging around here somewhere. The posters really tell you that Joe Petrali, Herb Reiber, Wendy Lindstrom, Dudley Perkins were the guys that raced these bikes. So these bikes were not owned by anybody. They were owned by the factory, and these bikes would be shipped to the various hills. The riders would be sent on a train, and then they would compete in the event, and then everybody would go home. So these bikes were ridden by the best of the best. This one, not only did Dudley Perkins ride the bike, but it was also raced by Joe Petrali, who was Howard Hughes' co-pilot in the Spruce Goose. It was raced by Wendy Lindstrom, and the whole entourage of Harley-Davidson factory racing team all raced the whole series of bikes. In 1932, and I have a letter here, Harley-Davidson offered these bikes for sale, not to the public. They offered them to the dealers. So I have a letter from Harley-Davidson Motor Company to a Harley-Davidson dealer in I think it was in Rock Island, Illinois, offering their whole lineup of hill climbers for sale. And I think the story starts out at the close of the 1930 season. That Harley-Davidson, by the way, they won everything in 1930. I forgot to mention that. Harley-Davidson was successful not only in building the bike, but in regaining the national championship from Excelsior. So that would have been in 1930, and then a very short time after that, they sold these bikes for one reason, to raise money for the company, because the company was nearly broke. So I have a really great letter. It's available for you to read here somewhere, and you can read about this bike being sold for $300 in that time frame. And in the world of collecting today, I can tell you one thing. They sell for a little bit more than that. A bike like this is in the area of $250,000 to $300,000 today. And all the way around the hill, all of these factory specials are considered among the rarest bikes in the world, and the value of those bikes is represented whenever one comes up for sale. The last one of these was sold was about 3 years ago. I think the one before that was probably 7 years ago. So almost all of these bikes that were built are known. Now what we're going to do right now is we're going to start this motorcycle for you, I think. I have Chris who's going to help me out. He's going to hand me some gasoline. We're going to put a little, oops, see if you can get that thing unscrewed. Good job. We're going to put some 110 in here, and a lot of people ask, what kind of gas do you use? And I usually say anything that'll make an engine go boom. And so right now, here I got it. Right now what we've got is some, I think it's Sunoco, isn't it? It's a Sunoco racing fuel. Now originally, this motorcycle didn't use gasoline, it used alcohol. So when you would start this bike, it would be blowing out alcohol. And if you've ever been around an engine that burns alcohol, it'll make you cry and whine and do everything else. So in the end of the day, it's an alcohol burning hill climber, and we're going to try to burn it up right now. So the way this works is, and let me tell you a little bit about the engine. It's a 750 engine, and it has 4 cams behind the cam chest. The little guy up front, that's the magneto. That's what fires the engine. And the valves are overhead valves. In 1930, all the Harley-Davidsons were flatheads. They were side valves. And this machine is an overhead valve, and it was just, as I mentioned many times, serial number 9 of 20 built. And without further ado, we're going to see if it'll start. Throttle's over here just like normal. Kicker here, a little choke. A little more choke. A little more choke. Uh-oh. Hey, Chris, climb up here and give it a couple kicks, will you? Well, I'm a little bit disappointed. I got Chris to get the bike fired up. Unfortunately, it only ran on 1 cylinder. I won't get down to the bottom of it till late tonight, but you did get to see the DH 750 Hill Climber run. Learn a little bit about DH 750 Hill Climber. Everybody, thank you for visiting. Chris, thanks for the kicks.